Good evening and welcome to all of our alumni and parent and student friends who are tuning in tonight. I'm Ken Owen, class of 1982 and Executive Director of Media Relations, along with our President-elect, number 20, Dr. Mark McCoy. We are here tonight, as many of you know, because you've pre-registered for a webcast and to talk about Dr. McCoy's vision for DePauw. He's going to be answering these questions, which have come in en masse from you. And so we want to make a point of, as we broadcast live from the Pulliam Center for Contemporary Media tonight on a very quiet DePauw campus, we should point out that if you got the email today, which you should have, there's a link in there if you haven't gotten a question to us and still want to. We'll be taking them live. I've got my screen in front of me. If I look distracted, it's because Steve Setchel's in the background waving, saying a question came in. So, it's great to have you here with us tonight. I'm never quite sure, Mark, which camera is on. So if I'm doing this all night, that's going to be fine. But this is really a great way to use technology to connect all of us and to talk about the future of DePauw, which is really looking bright. I'm very excited about your presidency.
Thank you.
I'm excited that we have 130 plus alumni who've registered for this event to watch it live, who are with us tonight. So here's to you, old DePauw, from all of us. And with that, we will get into the questions. I'm going to start with one from Ted Jacoby, which also has an element I'm going to throw in from Joseph Rose. And if I, by the way, mispronounce a name tonight, that's me. I apologize, but most of these names I think I know you folks and I will get. You were named president March 7th by unanimous vote of the Board of Trustees, and July 1 you officially become DePauw's 20th president. As Ted Jacoby writes, you're in a great position now, having been here, to hit the ground running as president. What is your assessment of the school's strengths and weaknesses as you step in? What opportunities exist to improve upon weaknesses? And given that you must prioritize, where will you invest your energy moving forward? And I'll piggyback Joseph Rose's question, where are we positioned well, and where are the challenges that DePauw faces? So I'll put those together as a first question tonight, Dr. McCoy.
Well, great to be here with you tonight and with everyone. It's good to have the chance to chat with you and take some questions. This was an interesting year for me because anytime I think there's a presidential transition, everyone on the cabinet starts polishing their resume and their vita and just to be sure. And so I spent this year kind of on my own college road tour, involved in several presidential searches around the country. What I became quickly aware of is that DePauw is ideally suited to succeed in ways that not very many institutions are. And so I think that one of the great strengths of DePauw is the love and the accomplishment of its alumni. And the strength of that alumni base, the proof of concept, the uncommon success of DePauw graduates, I think speaks volumes for us. I think also their philanthropic support of us, so that helps us move forward. I see, building on the good work of Dr. Casey and the great work of the cabinet and the faculty and staff here, there are so many great positives that I see at DePauw that I didn't see anywhere else. And this became very clear to me when I was in an interview at the same time I was in the DePauw interview, and one of the search consultants came and said, let me give you a piece of advice at another interview. Stop talking about DePauw. And it was clear to me at that point that really what I was seeing were these other institutions through DePauw's eyes. And there has been great progress over the past several years. I think that we're uniting together as a team about a very positive future vision. And so I think DePauw's future is very bright.
So you were in the pool in other presidential searches, and
thank God DePauw finished first, because I was worried about that not happening that way.
But you know, for a lot of people, taking a new position, it's clean slate, go somewhere where nobody knows you, and you start over, is a benefit.
Yeah, that's true. And you know, one of the things that all internal candidates know is you won't have a honeymoon because everyone knows you. You've spent your time here. But I think that my wife, my family, we all quickly fell in love with DePauw. We fell in love with this part of the country and living in Greencastle. What was most important to me was that I have faith in the team. You know, the presidencies these days are incredibly challenging things. They're not really a single person. They're a whole team of people. And the team in place at DePauw is so strong and so much stronger than any other place I visited that I was really blessed that DePauw finished first.
And you know, it's important, I think people have forgotten that Bob Bottoms was here from 1978 to 1986 when he became president. There are advantages to understanding how things work and who the people are.
I think the ability to hit the ground running is really important, and it's not that I intend my presidency to be a short-lived presidency, but the average presidency is very short span of time, and so you have a few years of trying to find out where your parking space is, and a few years trying to figure out what the team looks like, and trying to craft a vision, and pretty soon your clock is finished ticking, and you're moving on to the next thing. So the fact that I have 5 years invested here at DePauw, and DePauw has 5 years invested in me, gives us a great head start. Well,
I'm going to move to a question from Beth Bogey then, Andrea John asks essentially the same question. When we have a lot of these tonight, where people...
great minds work alike.
Well, yes, we're kind of all focused on the same issues, which is great, but it may be too early to say on June 1st of 2016, but what are your primary goals as you take the presidency of the university?
When I came to DePauw 5 years ago as the dean of the music school, people ask, what's your vision for DePauw? And my answer then was an unusual one, but the truth, which was I don't have one because I can't have a vision of a place that I haven't put my feet on the ground, and that I want to come and create a vision together. And that's what happened in the music school in a very, very successful way. Now, of course, here I've been 5 years and I know DePauw much better now. So I have some pretty big ideas and some pretty strong ideas, but nothing that I would yet say is the vision and the way forward for DePauw, because I think it takes time, and I want to hear from more people that I have not yet heard from. Now, I've already been around to almost every faculty department. I've met with almost, I don't know what percentage of the students, a huge percentage of the students. I've met with huge percentage of the staff. I'm spending a lot of time listening. I think we have 2 ears and 1 mouth to remind us of an important ratio. But there are some things that are top of mind for me. Of course, this has to be a transformational and aspirational experience for all students. And this has to be a student-centered and student-focused plan, that everything we do does this better help us change the lives of young people today. And so the idea that a DePauw education has to be transformational and aspirational, I think, is absolutely true. I think that we need to focus ourselves very strongly on our academic mission. I think that we need to look at things such as our library, for example. I think there are a lot of things that have been happening but need more attention and more focus brought to them. I think the diversity and inclusion work that's been going on for many years at campuses around America, but particularly here for us at DePauw, is very important work. The world is becoming an ever more diverse place, and if we're truly going to prepare the successful people of tomorrow, then they have to understand and how to navigate in that world. So I'm excited about those possibilities. There's a lot of big possibilities for us, and there's some major challenges. The fact is, liberal arts colleges in America are under siege in some ways, when everyone's constantly questioning the validity, as if there's some choice to be made between a career and a liberal arts education, which I think is just a false dichotomy. The challenge of the ever-rising price of higher education is something that is front of mind for all of us on the cabinet, and we are looking at a lot of ways to address that. So I think there's some challenges that any institution faces, and DePauw faces those as well, but I think we're positioned well to take those on. And then I think there are a lot of opportunities that we can take, building upon the great progress of Dr. Casey and Dr. Bottoms before him, to move us to the next level.
You talked about perceptions, and obviously if you're here, people either have a perception of you or they've heard something about you, and so they think they know you. One of the things I've heard, and it's kind of anecdotal, but there's an assumption that you were hired by the 19th president, so your presidency will be a continuation, that essentially you're cut from the same cloth.
Right, I've heard that too. And kudos to Brian. Brian's a dear friend of mine, and if it were not for Brian, I wouldn't be here. I mean, Brian found me, came to me, and convinced me to take a job when I wasn't looking for one, and was convinced I would never move again. And I enjoyed my time working with Brian. And the good things that Brian did when he was here were really spot on, and just he fundamentally shifted the way DePauw looks. He has this brilliant eye and this sense of nostalgia about higher education that DePauw will reap the benefits from for years and years to come. But Brian and I actually, as much as we're practically brothers, could not be more different in our operational style and the things that we think are important and that need to be done. And if Brian had come at my time and I had come at Brian's, we might do things exactly the way that we did them. But we've come at different times. And so I can build on Brian's work in the same way that he built on Dr. Bottom's work without having to continue that work. In other words, for example, Brian's got an eye for the campus that I could only hope to someday have. And he's done that great work. I don't need to focus on that, So I'm not going to be here building a lot of buildings and changing the face of campus because Brian did that so well. But if I am focused on a building, it's going to be on the library. That's where we have to start, and maybe a few housing opportunities and those types of things. But the bigger work there has been done. On the other hand, this idea of taking on liberal arts in the 21st century, that's a big question.
Well, that's our next question. Andy Reith checks in.
Segue?
Yes, well, it's perfect because Andy Reith asks, what are the greatest challenges facing liberal arts education and how are we positioned to address them? Obviously, parents today are sitting down at the kitchen table with a calculator, I guess would be old school, but with something, an abacus, and figuring out, how are we going to come up with the money to do this? And even more importantly, what's the ROI?
Right.
If I spend this kind of money on a DePauw education, is there a quantifiable difference?
Mm-hmm. That's really great. And the biggest challenge, I think, facing the liberal arts mindset, the liberal arts way today in America, is the constant assault that it's under because of this false dichotomy that's constantly being brought up to us about, well, you're either going to prepare for a career or you're going to go to a liberal arts school. When the truth is, liberal arts education is the strongest possible preparation for a career, and the success of the DePauw alum, of all of our alumni around the country, prove that. We have proof of concept. What we say here is, we don't need to give you that career training. We're not going to train you for your first job. We're going to train you for your life. Instead of teaching you how to make a living, we're going to teach you how to make a life. And making a living is a part of that. And you will be very successful, not just in your first job, but in your last job and throughout the arc of your career. And a liberal arts education and those type of reasoning skills, the ability to write well and to think critically, those are going to serve no matter what the field.
Well, the world has changed since we were both in college, and you're not going to have one career. You probably won't have two careers.
And we probably don't even know what career they're going to have. It may not even exist yet.
So dexterity is the key.
Right. And this, so we give you the toolkit, but we don't tell you what to build with it. Mm-hmm. Whereas there's a lot of places that will explain to you what it is that we're trying to get you to build. And we're, I think, a much more open-minded way than that.
Mm-hmm. Which I think Brad Stevens is one of thousands of examples we can point to, but on the executive track at Eli Lilly and decides basketball is his true love, and now he's coaching the Boston Celtics.
Right.
But you follow your heart, but you've got the tools to go out.
Exactly.
And
What you learned and what you gathered here is going to serve you as you find your passion and your purpose in life, which you may not do in the 4 brief years that you have at DePauw. But the skill set that you pick up and the things that you learn in your time here will serve you throughout your
And I sense that alumni at home are nodding and saying yes. And
and they're the proof of it. They're out there, yeah, look at me.
Well, yeah. One of the challenges I think we've had over the years is, how do you bottle that genie? Because we each have a story, we each have a sense. All of us have great love for this place, but getting that message to a high school kid is really
so true. And I think that there's, I served on the Commission for Accreditation for several years, and I think I evaluated maybe 600 schools over my time. You look at that, and there's so many schools that are saying, we're striving to be one of the best. To me, that's a false goal. That's the wrong goal, because you could never quantify it. You wouldn't know if you ever were. The fact is, we should strive to be one of a kind, and we need to put very hard edges on who we are. That the DePauw education is not just like the education you would get everywhere else. It's not, you can choose this type of, if you choose this type of education, you can go to the school X or Y or Z. It's, if you want the DePauw education, you can only come to DePauw to get it. We're the only people that provide it, and this is true in so many ways. So part of this is us marketing ourselves better, but actually just explaining what we do better. But another part of it is us actually discovering that ourselves, which we're on the cusp of.
And I'm an alum, and I have great love for this place. I never imagined I'd work here. I've been here a long time now. But I think, and I can say this because I've been on the other side as an alum, I think that there's a sheepishness sometimes. We need to be, and we are very proud of DePauw. But instead of using outward barometers, as you say, comparing our school to other schools, we have to be the best DePauw we can be, which we're very, very good at when we focus on that.
Exactly, and it is a very unique space in the market. I mean, I think that's how we push ourselves forward. It's interesting for me coming from the East Coast and living in Baltimore for many years, and then coming to the Midwest, because I'd lived in the West and I'd lived in the East, but I'd never lived in the Midwest. And there is this kind of reticence to talk about ourselves and this hesitance to say, oh, well, we don't want to talk about ourselves too much. But the truth is, I can come in from the outside and say, wow, look at everything that's happening here, and I have every right to talk about it. And I think that that's part of our job as presidents of colleges in America, is finding our truth and then sharing that truth broadly and widely and unabashedly, and then I'm happy to do that. And it's an easy job to do it, DePauw.
Doug Smith has a question. How will DePauw be different 10 years from now as a result of your leadership? That's a tough one.
That's an excellent question.
It is.
There's a couple things there. 10 years from now. Well, for one, I think I want people to know that DePauw is a place that is dedicated fundamentally to changing lives. That there's a lot of noble professions in the world, but this opportunity to take somebody from those ages of 18 to 22 and to give them their first step into the world, that's precious. And very few of us have that blessing that we can take that on, and we're fortunate to have it. So I think I would like these years to be thought of as the years that they were completely focused on the student experience. How do we best impact the leaders of tomorrow, and how do we best prepare them for that? I also think there's other parts of that, though, too. I think that, I've said many times since the appointment that I think I really have a couple of jobs. One is to fulfill the vision and mission of DePauw, and the other is to prepare the way for my successor. And it's not because I think my time here will be short. It is because even if I had a presidency as long as Dr. Bottom's, it would still be just a little mark on DePauw's timeline. We are blessed with this opportunity to steward this great institution for a very short window of time. And if it's about us, it's the wrong thing. It has to be about our successor. It has to be about the students that will come. What will the student of 2050 need? What's the class of 2060 going to be? And what resources are we going to leave them? So I think part of my focus over my time is to look at our budget models and to work with a great team that we have here to say, how can we best make sure that we are passing on the best possible DePauw?
We're going to get into diversity now, and we have a stack of questions here. I'm going to read the names of the folks that presented them, and then I'll ask you a broad-ranging question about just the issue, which is obviously front and center for every college in America right now. If you read the headlines, every campus is struggling with this issue. Has been for a while, but it seems like the issue has really come up to the top in the last 2 years. P. Akridge, Nancy White, James Woleb, I hope I got that right, James, Jan Robicher, Rosalie Pettigrew, and Gary Moore all ask questions in the ballpark of, I'll read P. Akridge's question, which is up top. Having questions who understand and reflect the diversity of the 21st century world is more important today than ever before, which everyone would agree with. How can DePauw be a leader in this area? How can we continue the strides that we've made?
Walk the talk. Just walk the talk. You can't pick up any writing today about higher education and not hear the talk. There's lots of people talking about this because it's an important issue, but we have to walk the talk. And the thing that I've said many times on many topics is that right now what I can offer are words. That's very frustrating for me because I'm not much of a word guy. It's more about actions and what are we doing. So I think that we have, through many years at DePauw, and in some ways as leaders and ahead of the curve, we've looked at diversifying our campus, both for our faculty and our staff and our students, for all three areas. But we have not yet built, and we just have to own this, we have not yet built an inclusive place. That's hard work. That there is so much work to be done. And so part of this is walking your talk. And for me, I know for my family and I, one of our advantages is that we are community members. We live in Greencastle. We love it here. We've been here. We're part of the community. People see us as part of the community. So this gives me an interesting opportunity. I've been in the community already, and I have been bringing this point to them. Look, DePauw is attempting to reflect the world of the future and to be the most inclusive, diverse place that it can be. But in order for us to do that, you have to help us. And the community is actually coming to this too. They're rallying to this same idea that these are the ways that we have to go. But because of my position, I'm able to talk about that more openly and frankly, honestly, than I would if I were an outside person. So I think what we're seeing is a beginning of a commitment to actually walking our talk. and making DePauw a place where every student, faculty, and staff member feels empowered to do their best. They feel comfortable here. They feel that they're welcome here. They feel they're a part of the community, and they're able to do their best work. And in order for us to do that, it cannot stop on the edges of DePauw's campus. It has to be throughout the community, and I think we're ready to do that work.
Just for background, I pulled up today, and I should point out that Bob Adams, our 18th president, is among those watching tonight. So,
hi, Bob.
Hello, Dr. Bottoms. Yeah, good to have you on
here.
board. I hope your signal is good and it's not choppy like it is sometimes at my house. It wouldn't be on our end if that were the case.
Yeah.
It's your cable provider. Call them and complain. In 1986, when he took office, DePauw University's student body from diverse cultural backgrounds was 3.5%.
Hard to believe.
When he left in 2008, we were at 16.4%. Today, we're close to 30%.
Right.
And we're well above the national average for liberal arts colleges. Now, having said all that, this is one of those areas where you never arrive. There's no destination
You're
point.
chasing the horizon on this.
Yeah, but I think that's something to consider from both sides. I mean, obviously, you never get there in terms of numbers don't reflect true diversity, true inclusion. Right. But by the same token, we have to celebrate the fact that we do have a very diverse student body.
So there's, and kudos to Dr. Bottoms for taking this on at a time well ahead of so many others. And we have achieved well beyond expectation or well beyond our peers, and that's not enough. We still have work to do. The point that I kind of make, and it's very elementary, but the idea that we say diversity and inclusion together so often now, it's such a buzz phrase that I don't know if we ever unpack the fact that these are really two totally distinct concepts. So the diversity of the campus has much improved, but we still have work to do on the inclusion, the inclusive nature of our campus. And to me, that's simply everyone being in a position where they're capable of doing their best work, where they're not feeling ostracized, they're not feeling other, they're not feeling outside, they're feeling a part of a group that can then begin to move forward. So DePauw has achieved so much that they should rightly be proud of, and especially when you can look at those numbers. We still have ways to go. But on the inclusivity side, that's something that we as the community all together have to work toward. And I've seen DePauw come together in the past 2 years in many ways, sadly because of challenges that face us, but it's those challenges that make us better. I've seen DePauw come together and take huge strides. The last 2 days of dialogue have been great. The second far better than even the first was, and the first was really good. We're already planning a third, and it's the faculty adopted it for every year in the future. This is for 5 years. These are the opportunities that we have to do what liberal arts schools do best, which is take on these thorny issues, discuss them, and find a way forward. And so I'm proud of the work that DePauw has done, but I'm certainly cognizant that there's much more work to do.
Where do you see as the biggest challenge in that area?
So I think that we are doing, in fact, I'm really heartened by this year's class, this year's coming first year class. More diverse than ever, and a lot of first generation students, and a different diversity, different background and diversity. But we have to build the space that they all feel comfortable in, and that's a give and take. That's working both ways for us to find our way to work together. So, I was at a posse dinner last week in New York, and those are just such heartwarming things, and incredible to see what folks are able to achieve in a short period of time when they're a part of that posse program. But several of the posse students that I spoke to talked about the challenge of coming from inner city New York or Chicago and coming to Greencastle, Indiana, and feeling like they were comfortable and part of that community. And so I think that's where our work is before us, is more on the inclusion side. I see faculty wholly committed to this. I see students genuinely committed to this. I'm really proud of our faculty, staff, and students in the ways that we've come at this. And no one's suggesting we've solved this problem, because it is a real problem in America today. It as much in Greencastle as it is anywhere else. We still have work to do, but we need to stop and say, yes, we are. We're joining forces here. We're joining arms to make certain that we get this work done.
Another question that came in several forms, and I will again read names here: Sarah Reynolds, William Gerber, Bruce Osborne, Thomas Motes, and Timothy Feemster all checked in with variants on the question that I know you get all the time, and I've heard you speak on it a couple of times, your feelings on the Greek system, which is obviously an integral part of DePauw's tradition.
Absolutely, in our history.
Yes.
You know, I am a strong proponent of our Greek system, and when you look at the history and the success of Greek students, whether we're talking about just at DePauw or nationally, it's amazing. It's an impressive history. And so, you know, things such as the percentage of our Supreme Court that were Greek, or the percentage of our Congress that is Greek, or the percentage of leaders of Fortune 500 companies that are Greek. You know, the Greek experience clearly gives people an edge. Then you look at it on DePauw's campus, and you see our persistence rates and our retention rates and our graduation rates and our GPAs among Greek students is higher than the university average. Clearly, that's a success story. But that's not to say that that's not without its problems. And so I think that we need to address that openly and honestly as well. What I've been saying on campus is we cannot confuse the Greek culture with the party culture in America today, because they are not the same thing. The party culture is a challenge of its own. And people think, well, is he coming in and saying we're going to stop partying in college? Of course not. That's part of college. That's part of your social experience. But can we take on high-risk drinking? Can we look at our unsafe behaviors? Yes. And should we? Yes, we should. If we are going to take that on and try to be successful at it, would we be more successful at taking that on if we have a strong Greek system or if we don't have a strong Greek system? And the answer is clearly we need the strong Greek system. Our Greek students are leaders on our campus, and they have been for generations, and we expect that to continue. And we'll need their help in addressing and making sure that everyone is safe and feels included here at DePauw.
And one of the questions is, you were not a member of a Greek
I was not.
Okay. What do you, and I think that, you know, John Belushi rolling a keg down the street, probably in 1978 in Animal House, set us the whole thing back 30 years. But does it boil down to accountability, and not just for Greek students, but for students in general, a culture of accountability?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, to me, it boils down to one very simple fundamental premise. I want anyone's DePauw experience to be the most transformational and aspirational experience of their life. I want this to feed them and fuel them throughout their lives. I am such a proponent and a product of and a fan of the liberal arts education. And I so believe in its power to change lives and to teach people the life well lived. And that's what we do every day. Anything that gets between us and that has to be taken on, has to be addressed. And so the Greek system doesn't get between, the Greek system helps us get there. The Greek system gives us the leadership opportunities, gives us the opportunity to find our way. We just need to make certain that it's safe and it's inclusive. And so in all ways, you know, the simple question is this: does this change a student's life? If yes, let's do that. If not, let's find a way to mitigate that so that we can make certain. When you do the math, it's pretty sobering. We get 800 days on campus. We get 600 days in class, and then the rest of your life follows that. Now, if you knew you only had 600 of anything, I have $600 and this has to last me the rest of my life, boy, you would hold on to every dollar. We get 600 days to change their lives. We'd better be good at that, and we better be solely and totally focused upon it.
James Mullen weighs in with this question. After your first year as president, what will be the main effort you will identify, and I suspect you'll do this before your first year is over, to increase the already strong employment and postgraduate acceptance of DePauw students? That was also echoed by Marjorie Macy and Scott Moen. Obviously, there is so much focus these days on outcomes. And if you're going to pay for a college education, even if you're receiving a major scholarship and you're paying a portion of what the sticker price is, you expect there to be some outcome from a college degree, obviously. And we have to be mindful of that from the beginning and communicate that to parents.
And I don't think the way that we get there is by selling out the liberal arts tradition. I don't think that's it at all. I know that some schools feel that it is, and their backs against the wall, and so they're going to become this professional training school. And I don't think that's the answer. And I think that this is a red herring that we're chasing down, this idea that, oh, it's one or the other. The fact is that we don't have to have an apologetic approach to the liberal arts. But what we do have to have is an incredibly strong and rigorous liberal arts program that then has bridges to the real world. So Al and Kathy Hubbard with the Hubbard Center gift, big step toward that direction, where now every student comes in and has this opportunity to begin to think about life after DePauw while they're still at DePauw. What are we doing to prepare ourselves for that world afterwards? The McDermott Center and the Management Fellows and all of our Fellows programs and our Honors programs, all of these ways, the internships, the winter terms, those ways that we move our students from the DePauw bubble to the real world are the keys to our success in this. And I'll tell you, so I ran a radio show here at DePauw for 5 years as the Dean of the Music School, and I would bring students in after every winter term, after every internship, and I would say, so what did you do? And you know, when you talk to most students, college students in America today, you say, well, what did you do for your internship? Well, you know, I worked at the shop down the street, and I helped them make signs, or I worked for this local figure, government person, or whatever. You ask our students, well, I was in New York, I was in Haiti, I was out solving hunger, I was, you know, they're doing these amazing things that are the bridge from the DePauw experience to the real world. So I think that what we need to do is make certain that those experiences are powerful and meaningful and well executed. And we have an interesting opportunity that the cabinet right at this time is exploring about how our center structures work and how they work to bridge us from the DePauw experience to the real world. And I think there's some exciting days ahead.
And is part of it, you know, you talk to students who've been out 30 years, alumni, and they will tell you that the winter term they had was a defining experience. They got a job from it. In my case, it taught me what I didn't want to do with my life, one of them.
Which is as valuable as what you do.
Very valuable, yes.
Right,
I mean, it's better to learn that than, you know,
Yeah.
when you're 19 than when you're 30.
So true.
But do we want to create more of those opportunities if we can?
Absolutely, but it's important that we note that we cannot constantly expand. You know, there is a challenge at DePauw. I affectionately refer to DePauw as the school of the and I will say and to a student, and they will always pick it up. I'll give you an example. I'll say, so what's your major? Economics and French. You know, because if I say, so what do you do? Well, I'm the student government vice president of this, and I'm the secretary for this, and you can ask and you know, and we'll get 25 ands because we are really out there embracing the world. You know, we're trying to do these things. And I have this belief that you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. And you have to you have to learn to make decisions. So when people say, well, should DePauw do this, and should DePauw do this, and should DePauw do that? Yeah, many times the answer to that is yes, but sometimes the answer to that is no. And the reason we have to say no to that is so that we can say yes to this. I categorize this as a best versus most question. Do we want your best, or do we want your most? Those are two totally different things. And we have to think very carefully about what we're trying to prepare students for.
I'm going to make an admission here. Steve, if you could reset the computer because it decided to do a Windows update.
Oh, good.
Murphy is alive and well, and here at 8:32 at night, you know, could have waited till 9:05.
Yeah, that's all right.
Both taking our microphones off, but I don't have a computer right now, so that's all right because we're doing fine. I've got cards. The old linear cards are doing the job.
See, this is why we hire the old guys to get this work done, right?
Watch it. Marcia Engel Alden kind of weighs in with a question that follows that. So we're talking about outcomes and how everybody's talking about you come here, this will happen to you, and of course there are no guarantees in life. But she says with the increasing student competition from the flagship public universities, DePauw has selected the Dean of the School of Music, would be you. In a parallel analogy, it seems unlikely that Indiana University's School of Business or the School of Medicine would select a chair of the music department as their dean.
Okay. I'm not sure I get the question completely, but it's one of two things I would think there. One is the question of a musician, you know, and the interesting thing is there are more and more artist presidents in America today than there have ever been. The president of the University of Richmond is an accomplished musician. The president of Goucher is really getting lots of attention now and coming to that from a musician's position. I think your work as a musician, as a conductor, as I was, gives you lots of leadership opportunities, and it also forces you to double down on the creative nature of what you do. And I think that if we ever needed creativity, it's more now than ever. But then there's also the question of, well, what happens when we take the person from the physics department to now run an entire flagship institution, or that type of question? And that's true. All of us as college presidents come from some discipline. but it's your ability to see the bigger page. So for me, my musical background as a trumpet player, I always read one line. When I became the conductor, I learned to read all the lines at the same time. You know, you come from one school and you take over a university, there's a big change that's involved in that. I think the key today, and what I've found in my fellow presidents, younger, newer presidents that I'm meeting with through a lot of different opportunities, is that the need for creativity, for seeing the same problem in a different way, in thinking of innovative, forward-thinking ways to solve age-old problems. That's what boards today are looking for, and I think that people from the creative mindset and from that creative background have good experience for that.
And your predecessor was a college administrator. I know he had to make some adjustments moving into that year. President Bottoms has told me on several occasions, you know, it's an adjustment. So March 7th, you know, you trotted in front of the cameras and we announced you as the president. How has your life changed in that period? I mean, all of a sudden, you know, you are the president, and you're moving toward a point where you're going to be leading this institution. Does your mindset change? Obviously, your schedule gets a lot more crowded.
Yeah, I think there's, you know, I joked that when I came here as the dean of the music school, I felt like I was drinking from the fire hose, and now I feel like I'm drinking from the power washer. I think, yeah, your life changes, but interestingly, I've spent, full confession mode here, I spent a good bit of my career walking away from presidential nominations or opportunities to explore presidencies. It was only in the past 2 years that I've begun to think seriously about what the next step in my career was. I'm not a person that wants to climb a ladder. I'm not a person who needs a title. That's just not who I am. And so I've not really been interested, frankly, in being a college president because I'm too tied to my discipline. These were the things that I wanted to do with my career. As the past years have developed and you move on in your career and you begin to think, well, what's the next step for me? And so in that, and with the prodding of several great people who believed in me and what I should be doing, the past 2 years I've investigated this presidency thing pretty seriously, and I've taken coursework and I've been involved and have been nominated for these programs across the country to be involved and to learn about presidencies. And for me, what brought me here is a great love for DePauw, a belief that I understand who DePauw is, and that I can help facilitate who DePauw needs to be. Being a part of a team that I believe in and being able to stay a part of that team rather than start all over and reassemble a team somewhere else. Being a part of a tradition that I believe in. Seeing these people for whom these people that I love and for whom I want to be the right person. You know, I'm so impressed by our boards, all of our boards, and by the alumni everywhere I go. And I think, you know, I want to make the institution that you went to, I want to make your alma mater better. I want to make you more proud of where you went to school. And so for me, it was a natural transition. When I decided that I was going to go the presidential route, my greatest fear was what happens if one other search ends before DePauw's ends. You know, the bird in the hand, bird in the bush that we all face every time we're in a job search. And it was just fortunate for me that DePauw was a few days ahead of some others and worked out perfectly for me.
And you love Greencastle.
Oh, I do. You know, and I love it here. I mean, as an artist and as a musician, it's hard to be in a small town. You've got to be close to things. You have to be able to, because you're not going to be able to find that artistic nourishment in a small town like this unless it's connected to other things. So with DePauw, we bring it here. You know, so we have so many great artists and so many great thinkers and so many great poets, and all of that comes to campus regularly, and then we have the cities nearby. So it's a beautiful part of the country. My family, my children know this is home. This is home to them. They've lived half of their life in Greencastle, which is a great experience. And so for us to be able to stay, it's been terrific.
And a stronger Greencastle means a stronger DePauw, and vice versa.
And you know, I was just talking with a community member tonight before I came to this interview about the amazing success of Music on the Square. And what's really amazing about that success is that no one thinks the music school owns it. And I love that. I was invited to an event in Music on the Square, a community event in Music on the Square. I came in, I sat in the back row, and a person stood up and said, "We'd like to welcome you to Music on the Square." And I said, "Thank you. It's great to be here." You know, because it's just, and I love that. So the more we see the community come together, the better we are.
That is terrific. I'm going to give you a live question here from Ron Stiver, class of '96. By the way, Ron, Nick Moroza says hi. I know he'd want me to say that. With stagnant family incomes in Indiana and the nation, How can we keep a DePauw education accessible to students of all backgrounds?
What a great question, because this is a massive problem in America, and it's especially a massive problem at a place like DePauw. And here's the challenge, and I like to often frame these challenges so that we see what we face. And on one end, we have this challenge. By some studies, the cost of higher education in America since 1970 has gone up 270%. And the median household income in America since 1970 has gone up 9. Okay, so there's your challenge, is if the cost of education has gone up so much and yet the ability to pay for it has not, there's a problem. But on the other side of the equation, you have this problem. I often say the liberal arts model was not invented by an accountant. It was invented by an artist. It was invented by a philosopher. It was invented by people who were deep thinkers but not necessarily looking at the business model. And so if you paid the full stated cost of tuition at DePauw, if you paid the full stated cost price, if you paid the full price, you would not pay the full cost. So even if you pay full price, and you get no scholarship help whatsoever, you still aren't paying what it costs to educate you. So on the one hand, we can't keep raising the price because people can't afford it. And on the other hand, we have, even at full price, we're not covering the cost. Well, that's a true problem. So how do we get over that problem? Well, lots of people do it in a lot of different ways. Some people give up on the liberal arts model. Some people give up on the smaller class size. Some people come out with cash cows of nursing programs or some other type of professional training. Anything they can find, any port and storm to solve the problem that we have here. That's the financial problem. We can't do that at DePauw. We are the liberal arts education. We are the hallmark of a liberal arts education. We are a beacon of liberal arts education. So we're not going to ever give that up. So therefore, we have to look at our business model and say, how do we make that happen? And I think there's a couple of things that immediately come to mind. Of course, the most obvious is through the endowment. And right now, about, I think, 35% of our financial aid is endowed. And we have to move that number up exponentially in order to address the future moms and dads, that are sitting around trying to make this tough decision. So I think part of it is endowment. I think part of it also is us examining every element of our cost structure, and we've been doing that for many years now. Finding, there was a funny brouhaha on campus a few years ago when we switched from Coke to Pepsi. There's a reason we're making those kinds of decisions, because we're trying to find the way to make this DePauw education possible to every student who would benefit from it and who wants it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about money, because there's a sense sometimes that DePauw has a furnace in the basement. We just burn dollars every day. And
we have a money tree out front that we shake.
Yeah, and I've tried to get the dollars to come off. They won't. They're pretty stubborn. But I'm giving a speech to the class of 1966 next week for their 50th reunion. I was at the archives yesterday doing some research, unrelated totally to this program tonight. But it turns out the endowment in 1966 was $10.1 million. Our cost, tuition and fees, was $1,350. I think room and board was $400 on top of that, $425. A car, by the way, in 1966, the average car was about $2,800. So it was more than double the cost of the college education. So it gives you some perspective on how inflation works. But today, with our endowment in the 600 plus range, sometimes you hear from people that think, well, DePauw keeps building. DePauw seems to have a lot of money. This is an expensive enterprise, and alumni support, student scholarship money, the ability to attract scholars who otherwise wouldn't be able to go to a school like DePauw is more crucial than ever before.
Absolutely right. And we change lives. When you give $10 to DePauw, you're changing a life. That's what we do. We are in the business of changing lives. That's what DePauw does. It seems, and I'm guilty of this too, because 5 years ago, I was an outsider. And so I looked, what did I do? And they called me up and they said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about a job at DePauw. I immediately Googled DePauw and I started looking it up. Well, what's their endowment? Oh, they must be rich. They've got everything. Oh, look at that. That's really great. And kudos to all the great work that has gone on for generations to make DePauw as strong as it is financially, to give it the endowment it has. But when you compare an institution's endowment, you're looking at the wrong number. We really need to be looking at endowment per student, and that's where things really get interesting. So when you compare one endowment to another endowment, that's really meaningless, But when you compare the endowment per student to endowment per student, and that's where you see DePauw looks wealthy, but because we are trying to make this life-changing education available to so many students, it's really not. It's really behind the curve. And so I think what we need to make certain that everybody understands is it's always alumni paying it forward. I tell you, it chokes me up because I'm in living rooms with folks who will tell me, you know what, I was a first-generation college student, and DePauw took a chance on me. You know, I was a student who had no idea what I was going to do, and DePauw took a chance on me. I knew I couldn't afford a DePauw education, and yet DePauw took a chance on me over and over again. And they'll name the name of the scholarship that they had 40 years ago that changed their lives. And then they come back and they say, and now I want to pay it forward. I'm going to give back to that and make sure that the next generation has it. So again, but coming back to my first statement, you know, one of the things that's most impressive to me is the accomplishment of our alumni and the love they have for DePauw. And they have done amazing work for us, and they keep giving back, and they keep making this possible. But we have miles to go before we sleep. This needs to be the year of the $1 billion endowment.
I'm going to skip to what I was going to save as the last question, because you just touched on it. You know, Don Dasky just gave the $20 million gift, which was amazing. He and his wife,
Barbara, two of the greatest people on the earth.
And the stories he tells, not only when he's in a DePauw venue about DePauw, and this is true of many of the people who are watching tonight. Luke Bretcher asked, what is the best way that DePauw can support you as president? We may get to that point later. But I really believe personally as an alum that one of the greatest things that we each can do in the world is to tell that story in a public way, which Don has done very well, and others like Ron Stiver have done very well. But the connection between success in life and this place, because hearing those personal testimonials has more impact than any advertising campaign you can buy.
And who has this success? You know, I mean, that's the thing. Who has this success?
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to not name names here to protect the innocent, but I was speaking to a person at another institution, and they said, this must be the easiest job in the world.
I hear the same thing.
Yeah, you know, and it's like, really, how's that? And they're like, well, look at all the success you've got. I mean, all you got to do is trot these people out all the time. And it's so true. We are blessed with success. We are overrun with success. And so when alumni ask, and I love that question, by the way, thank you very much for that question, you know, how can we best help? Well, there's a lot of things that people can do, and of course what's college presidents, that's our job, to go ask alumni to help us make things happen financially. But it's more than that. It's your ability to talk to your neighbors about DePauw and to talk to their families about DePauw, to bring a DePauw intern into your workspace, to work with our alumni office to find out where the next alumni event's happening that you can be a part of and be supportive of. If you could host an event in your home for prospective students, there are so many ways to be connected to DePauw. And you know, in my own life, I went to some small institutions and some large institutions, some public institutions, some private institutions. And frankly, when Johns Hopkins calls me up and says, hey, we would like you to give money, I'm thinking, well, what connection do I have to Johns Hopkins? You know, I mean, I went there, but I don't know if that makes much sense. I don't have that same. When I talk to DePauw students, DePauw alum, they're like, oh my, I remember what a life-changing, they had this great connection to DePauw. And so I think sharing that story about how the DePauw experience is so different than what you would find anywhere in America.
Christopher Cantwell asks about Adler.
Adler.
So I didn't have it written down, and I knew I was going to juxtapose those two letters, but he'd like to know more about the new dean, what her plans are for the future of the school. And adjunct to that, Jennifer Gosnell wonders, you've been the dean of the School of Music. Will you continue to have sway over there? Obviously, as president, you're going to be watching things, but will you have your hands off the controls?
Yeah, I had 5 great years as the music school dean, and have so many. There are so many people in that school that I admire so deeply, and that I could only hope to emulate. And it's now time for me to let go. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to ignore it, because I'm the president. That's a part of DePauw, and it's my job to look over all of DePauw. But people know very quickly that I'm not a micromanager, and that's not my thing. As for Aiden Adler, you know, the thing I've said many times is, thank goodness she didn't apply 5 years ago, or I wouldn't have a job. An incredibly accomplished woman, a great musician. She's was an accomplished French horn player, played in the Rochester Philharmonic. She has a liberal arts degree, interestingly, not even a music degree as an undergraduate. She has a liberal arts degree from Princeton, and then 2 masters and 2 doctorates. She's worked for so many major orchestras in America. Her last boss was Michael Tilson Thomas. She's known throughout the country, and for us to have her come to DePauw is a huge statement about who DePauw is. If DePauw can bring Aiden Adler, then DePauw is doing really great things.
I've met her. She is terrific.
She's
a lot of energy and a good soul.
And I want to say also, the cabinet, I take office July 1st, but we've also brought on Anthony Jones as our Vice President of Enrollment Management. And another brilliant man. When people meet this man, they are going to immediately see this is a guy of very high values, a man who walks his values, and a man who knows how to execute and get things done. And he's also brilliant and very, very well reasoned and has some great ideas on how DePauw moves in the marketplace.
Emily Chu tuned in when we did the town hall thing right after you were named president, and she recalls, and I remember this too, that you talked about the possibility of the signature centers, as she calls them, the Center for Contemporary Media, where we are right now, the McDermott Center for Entrepreneurship, and the Parental Institute for Ethics having more synergies, in other words. Have you given that a lot of thought, and where are you on that?
Yeah, so that's a statement that I think I made in our all media night that
yes.
we had a few weeks ago.
Which was terrific, by the way.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. That was great fun, and I'll tell you what I really loved about that. So all students, I mean, these were not, I felt like I was among the pros, and here are students who are running the whole show. I mean, I thought, well, Ken will be here and he'll coach them up and make sure, hey, we're making it happen. You were keeping
I teed it up and they took off.
And they took off. It was really great. And I think it's great for them when they see, the Ken Owens of the world, coming back to help them out. And so that's how that thing works. That's where I could be too. So I think that was all good.
Thanks.
That conversation was, we've decided here at DePauw that we're no longer going to call them silos. We're going to call them cylinders of excellence. We have this idea in higher education that there's all these cylinders of excellence, but there really needs to be synergy. The truth of the matter is that, as one of our faculty members so brilliantly said the other day in a conversation we were having together, she said, life is interdisciplinary, so our education better be. And that is so true. I would take that one step further and say life is about synergy. Success in the world is about synergy. So we cannot be a silo and be successful. So what we've begun talking with at the cabinet level is, with all of these great centers, so we have the Tenzer Technology Center coming online, we have the McDermott Center, we have the Pulliam Center, we have the Hubbard Center, and we have the Prindle Institute. We have all of these great opportunities, these bridges from a liberal arts education to the real world. How can they work together? How can we make certain that they find a synergistic way to work? So you could imagine a way in which, for example, a student who develops a business plan, and they have a great business idea, and how would they benefit from that? Well, they could bounce from center to center and make it better everywhere they go. So of course they're going to do that in the McDermott Center. That's where they're going to start that idea. But then they're going to be here in the Pulliam Center talking about how do you market an idea like that. And they're going to be out at the Prindle Center talking about what are the ethical implications of how this is doing. They're going to be at the Tenzer Technology Center figuring out how they make that work in the real world. All of those centers could come together in a very powerful and synergistic way and still serve their own market. So that's the conversation that we're having now.
And with that, building a better sense of community, and I mean that in a broad sense. Not to bring up those guys up north, but every year we watch them in their stands with their chants, and they get there early, they leave late. Getting DePauw students to see kind of DePauw as the umbrella they fit under, and all these other things being subheadings.
It's so true.
Is important.
Here, and this is a real challenge at DePauw, and I think it's more of a challenge at DePauw than many institutions, and it has something to do with size. So, for example, if you're a large Research One institution that's a major metropolitan center by yourself, then it's easy to identify with whatever's on your ball cap or your sweatshirt. Even if you have a bunch of smaller things you're into, you're still part of the behemoth that is this major thing. Or you can even be at a small school where there are no opportunities whatsoever. All there is this one school. This is what you got, and this is what. So it's easy to identify with the sweatshirt at that institution too. But DePauw excels in so many places, and it builds so many opportunities for people to find themselves in a smaller field. So the Greek system does that. Our majors do that. Our centers do that. All of these opportunities give you this opportunity to excel in a smaller sphere. and then your allegiance is to that smaller sphere. We are DePauw. We are DePauw. And it is our friends up north who teach us that over and over again. And I've actually already begun working with the student government process here, and they are all in on this idea that we really need to elevate this sense that we are DePauw.
Terrific. We're going to make this the last question of the night. We may wrap up with a couple of thoughts, but Jean Kipp wonders, what values do you hope to transmit to the students of DePauw during their 4 years under your leadership, and how do you plan to do this? Values.
You know, so one of the things that I have been saying over and over about DePauw is that we need to make explicit our values. We need to walk our values. And the first year is going to be spent identifying our values, our vision, and our mission. And I see these in pretty concrete terms. So the idea that your vision is how you think the world ought to be. You know, we envision a world that's perfect in whatever way. Then our mission is, what do we do to make that happen? You know, so here at DePauw, we make the world perfect by doing these things. And we're going to decide what our vision and our mission is based on those things that we value and those things that we state as our values. And so that's really hard work. What I would say in the answer to that question that I can give that won't last an hour is students will see our values by our actions, not by our words. But we have to start with the words. And I was talking to a student today about, and the student said, you know, I've seen you at, they listed off these things they had seen me attend. And they were talking about the, you know, right now serving as a dean in transition to a presidency and trying to get onto one and out of the other and manage both and keep all the plates spinning. And yet you're still at these things. And my point was, you will see my values. You will not have to hear them. You will witness them with your eyes, not your ears. And what we want DePauw students to graduate from is with this what we want them to graduate with is this great sense of what their values are, that we are trying to make the world a better place, that we realize that DePauw made us better people. And how do we pay that back? How do we change the world? I'm excited about those possibilities.
And I think the people watching at home, I feel this way, so I'm speaking for myself, but they look back at the 4 years they spent here as something they'd love to repeat, but certainly something that they want to make sure is available to future generations.
Right. And, you know, I think I see that a lot, you know, where alumni say, boy, if I could go back and have those 4 years again, those were 4 great years.
Ponce de Leon, baby.
Yeah, you know, but my response to that is always, you can.
Yeah.
You're just going to give it to someone else. You can give someone else those 4 great years, and that's what they're doing, and that's how we make. That's the real beauty of the private school, is that this is us consistently paying it forward. We're standing on the shoulders of giants.
So this is like a 1.5-way conversation tonight, because we're sitting here and we presume people are watching at home. Are you still there? But the questions have come in. We got all these questions in advance. We should do this again so we can keep the dialogue going. But in the meantime, how can alumni and other friends share with you their thoughts as you prepare to take the reins and move forward?
Yeah, you know, you can always president at DePauw. That's a great way, you know, in this world of asynchronous communication where, you know, I'm going to get to email, but it might be 11:30 before I do. That's a great way to reach out and to stay in touch. When you come back to campus, you know, that's always such a great opportunity. You won't believe how beautiful it is now. If you haven't been back for a while, things are really beautiful. Come back to an alumni event, or come back to any of the events that are happening on campus. Come see one of our lectures, or see it, or take in a play or a concert. Come be a part of it. And when we're out, anytime that any of us from DePauw are out, come say hi. You know, it's always wonderful to me to meet ever more of the DePauw family and see that that DePauw magic exists in all of us, and it's great to see it shared. So just be a part, and if you can help us participate, you know, participation is the key here. People think, well, DePauw got a huge multi-million-dollar gift, and the next week they got a multi-million. Yeah, we do, because we have such uncommon success. People can go out and do that. But your $10 gift makes a big difference. Your note with $1 will mean a lot to us, and we just want you to stay in touch with your alma mater. we've invested our this time in your 4 years of your life. We want you to invest some of your life in DePauw so that we can continue that tradition.
And those dollars are critical because some of the national surveys actually use that as part of their formula, but the voices too. I mean, just being engaged and involved.
Being engaged, that is so much it. Just be engaged. Reach out. You know, our alumni office would love to hear from every single alumni. That would be a great problem to have. Hey, Mark, we've got some problems here because the phones are ringing off the hook because so many alumni are engaged. Okay, we'll take that problem any day.
And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm kowen@depauw.edu, and I'm happy to hear from you too.
Right.
Dr. McCoy,
My
welcome
pleasure.
as president. We've been happy to have you here as Dean of the School of Music, but July 1 is the start date.
Yep.
We will continue this conversation with our alumni friends. Thank you all for watching tonight. I'm not even sure what camera's on because I've got Steve Setchel's computer stacked on top of mine, and yours is still working. But thank you for watching us tonight, and here's to DePauw. Good night.